Many people believe that Paul was a sinner. From the day that Ananias said to him to be baptized and wash away his sins, to the day that he had his head cut off by the Romans for his testimony about Jesus Christ. But these people believe lies like that to their own destruction. Because Paul himself said that he was no longer under obligation to the flesh now that he has Christ, and no longer plunges into the things of the former life, the wild living, the sin, etc. But now that he called all people to live a holy life and to walk the path of a sanctified believer. And that's what Paul did. He wrote about what happened to him upon his conversion, where he stated that when he was a sinner, he did things and was controlled by the flesh and wasn't at liberty to do the things of the Spirit. And when he sinned, it was the sin living in him, and he had no hope. And then he talked about how Christ brings that hope, the new way, where you're no longer under obligation to follow the flesh and its dictates. And furthermore, Paul warns that if you do follow the flesh and its dictates, you will perish. You see, Paul was a new man. He used to be a sinner, and he went around doing sins, and indeed he was the chief of sinners, as he said. He was killing people for Christ, though that puts him as the chief of sinners. But when he came to Damascus, he was no longer the chief of sinners. He had his sins washed away through the baptism of Jesus Christ. And he became holy. And he walked a new way. I want to tell you why it is that believers want to believe lies about Paul. That he was still a sinner after he came to Christ. It's because they live in a postmodern, sinful generation where they are not free from sin. They are slaves to sin, like Paul said he used to be. They are still chief among sinners. They are ungodly and dishonest. They are unfruitful, lazy workers of darkness. That is why they want to believe lies about Apostle Paul, because it makes them feel better about their rebellion against God Most High. And let me tell you, my friends, the only person they are deceiving in the end is themselves. For we know the command of the Scriptures where Peter warned, it is a command to be holy. For God himself said, be you holy, for I, the Lord, am holy. If we are still the chief of sinners like Paul used to be before he came to Christ, and then we claim Christ, we are blasphemers of the way of Christ. We're blasphemers of the way of Christ. If you are still a chief of sinners, and you believe Paul was, and you yourself are still, yet you hold to Christ, you are worse than an unbeliever. You are a blasphemer of the way of Jesus Christ. And the good news is that you can repent and be forgiven if you come away from this blasphemous path. Do not be a stumbling block to the way of Christ in this earth. Otherwise, Jesus will crush you He will remove you, because Jesus is coming to remove the stumbling blocks. He will crush them. It is written that the hand that cut the stone out of the mountain, woe to him unto whom that stone lands, in the book of Daniel. Woe to him unto that stone lands. It will be a stumbling block to him who falls over it, but it will crush him upon he whom it lands. That's what Jesus said. So woe to you who blaspheme the way of Christ by living as a chief of sinners, yet claiming his name. For the stone that was cut from the mountain by no hand of man shall fall upon you and crush you. It is time to fear God and repent, come away from our rebellion against the word of truth, and align ourselves with Jesus Christ and become disciples of the old order, instead of living in a fake post-modern generation where Jesus is no reality in their lives. He doesn't move in their lives. There's no reality of Jesus in this post-modern generation because of their wickedness. God is far from them. If you want to join the disciples in heaven and Paul and be at their table, then you have to be like them. How were they? They were those who gave the command to live holy lives, to abstain from sin, to not dirty your robes in immorality, to come away from uncleanliness, ungodliness, fornication, homosexuality, dishonesty, revelries, and the like. They are they who told you, warned you by letters to come out of sin and to have nothing to do with the works of the flesh and have nothing to do with the works of darkness. They are they who warned you those things. If you want to sit with them, you have to do what they said. You have to come away from the works of the flesh, from being a chief of sinners, from being ungodly, from being a fornicator, from being an adulterer, from being a homosexual. You've got to come away from being a liar, from being a worldly person who lives in revelry, which is drunkenness, going along to parties and the like, and wild living in this postmodern generation, and living for pleasure. You have to come away from these things and obey what the apostles said. Only then will you be able to be with them in the kingdom where Jesus is. If you do not, you'll be cast away as a worthless branch, not worth your salt, into the outer darkness, where there will be a weeping and gnashing of teeth, where all end up who are unfruitful workers of darkness, as it is written. Jesus bless you.